hit the big. Ladies and gentlemen, excited
Hello,
to see everybody. Happy Friday.
Hang tight while everybody makes it in. I'd imagine we're going to have a pretty good showing today.
Don't be overwhelmed by the star power. We did bring the real John Hammond today. So
not that fake guy that was in that Jurassic Park movie.
So I have to say, John, that both you and Jason said you weren't actors, but I have to say, I felt like you played that solid good yesterday. That was
sticking the mud from the insurance company that wants us to do everything right. Yeah, you're good at that, John.
Right. It does help. As a matter of fact, I said the same thing to Jonathan. I said, if you can always give me the role where I'm allowed to be confused, slightly scared, and just try to figure things out on the run, then I'll probably not stumble over that because I was confused and scared and tried to figure things out on the run, right? So like if you're put in a position where your primary objective is to overcome a threat, I mean, the dinosaurs were a bit of a new one for you. But I felt like it couldn't have been too far stretched from a normal day.
Yeah. Well, we had a ton of fun. I think it was good. Yeah. I hope so.
It definitely was. Seeing as the last time I checked, there were over 4,900 views. I think it was.
Perfect.
So anybody in the chat who doesn't know what we're talking about, I'll certainly
just leave. Yeah.
Put a link. I did send out the email late this week because I wanted to confirm that we would get the real John Hammond. And so I think most folks know why we're here, but just in case not, hope everybody was able to join us or watch the viewing of Jurassic Sock yesterday. If you did happen to watch it already, we would absolutely love to hear what your favorite part was, or if you have a question for the John Hammond on how to protect your park from dinosaurs.
I mean, if you guys aren't familiar, John Hammond works for this little company called Huntress, and they do a tiny bit of work in the cybersecurity space, I think, kind of.
Smidge.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, John, maybe you want to tell just a little bit of the Hunter story just to start, and how you guys interact with the MSP community and that kind of thing, because I think a good number of folks here know who you guys are, but these cybersecurity platforms are big and complex and sometimes kind of scary to us dumb sales guys. So you can give the Huntress 101 if you'd like.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks. So hi, hey, hello. My name's John. I'm a senior security researcher over at Huntress. And Huntress is a managed threat detection kind of software as a service cybersecurity vendor for providing, a solution to managed service providers, hunting for hackers and badness and malware, right? By using kind of a unique perspective. Traditionally, we would search for footholds, like the hacker's backdoor or their implants or how they're really maintaining access. We've kind of evolved the platform more to now ransomware canaries and managed antivirus, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't mean to make this commercial or an advertisement for you guys. I just hope that we can offer something kind of neat and something kind of worthwhile for cybersecurity and education. Myself being one of the security researchers, I am absolutely a nerd, definitely a geek, like to get into the technical portion and fun stuff like that. But I don't want to beat you over the head with anything on a Friday afternoon here. So we'll keep it pretty conversational, casual, and fun for what we're doing today.
Good.
So while I know Alex has a list of things he wants to ask, I'm just curious. So how did you get into this? Did your degree start? Do you have a degree? Like, did you just hack your way? So I kid you not, many times I was a former assistant principal, like the student that got himself kicked out of high school for changing everybody's grades ends up as like the next cybersecurity specialist. So what's your story?
Oh, well, thanks. No, I mean, again, I don't mean to.
Did you ever get kicked out of school is what we really want to know.
I did some shady stuff at school. I could tell you some of those fun stories
I feel
back
like
in,
I've walked the U's down to detention more than once. Anyway, tell me.
No. So for
Is the
you were asking
statute of
me-
limitations up on all these stories?
Yeah.
yeah, totally. I'll just give you that background if I were to establish credibility for whatever obligatory thing. Yeah, my degree was in electrical engineering. I studied at the U.S. Coast Guard Academy because they don't have a computer science or cybersecurity degree, which is really frustrating. But pivoted over from the Coast Guard to work with the Department of Defense. I originally worked as an instructor with the Cyber Training Academy there. I would teach military and civilian personnel cyber threat emulation. So how to be the bad guy, right? How to act as the adversary, hack on the keyboard with a lot of offensive PowerShell, Python, other C2 frameworks, and spooky stuff like that. Cool. Then I worked with the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, so to actually be on the keyboard, doing it for real as a red team operator. And then Kyle swooped in and saved me. He was like, hey, I know you're doing some stuff over there on the government side, but you want to do some real stellar work out here in the MSP channel? So I'm like, that sounds like fun, buddy.
That's awesome. So you mentioned Kyle, and I have to bring up the comment that he made that just really kind of rattled my world a little bit. And I want you to, and I'm sure it's very defensible, but Kyle, when we were talking about my second favorite quote from yesterday was the K that shall not be named. So after the K that shall not be named incident, Kyle was on an MSP call with, I think it was with MSP Geek, but I forget who it was. Somebody got Kyle out to do a conversation. It was wonderful. He's super insightful, great dude to listen to. But one of the comments he made was somebody asked him a question. Knowing that all the top line anti-malware, antivirus products got beat in this particular incident, if you were running an MSP today, which one would you pick? And Kyle said, I wouldn't spend a lot of money on my antivirus. And my brain went, but then he came back and said, we can manage the free BitLock, or we can manage the free Windows Defender through Huntress. Even if you're not using Huntress, still, this is about a layered approach, and he actually said, I wouldn't be opposed to going out and buying that web root thing. And my brain exploded. So number one, I want you to talk to what you guys are doing with the Windows antivirus, because I just think it's cool as hell. And I don't think enough people know about it. Every time I see you guys mentioned in a thread somewhere, somebody's like, oh, in order to manage Windows antivirus, you got to buy Windows ATP, this, that, the other. And for the price of that, they can buy your product and use the free stuff. So I just think that's a really cool thing. And if you want to expand on Kyle's conversation, that's fine. But I like to throw him under the bus for having said he run an MSP on WebRoot.
Ooh, yeah. So
that's a brave statement right there.
Did you not realize Alex was going to drive the bus over you with your own words?
But I like what he's saying, right? What he's saying is you can't tool your way out of this problem. There's got to be layers to it. There's no silver bullet. Like that's what I took from that. Even though he threw out some entertaining names to me, that's all side fodder. That's where the joke's at. But the point was layers, right? Tools.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I don't mean to sound like a broken record, and I'm sure you've heard me say it, or others, or plenty other in the space we talk about defense in depth, those layers, that segmented, compartmentalized security stack. We talk about assume compromise, assume breach, the mentality that, look, bad guys are going to get in. Hackers are going to muff stuff up at some point. If you're looking at X incident or Y incident or whatever just happened in the news and on the headlines, you do see, it bypassed however many antivirus and preventive security solutions. With that said, prevention is hard. Like, it's really hard.
And getting harder.
Yeah. You're basically asking a computer to see the future, right? Which is hard to do. We don't know how to do that, so we can't really teach a computer how to do that. You could lure in your buzzwords of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Truthfully, I haven't drank the Kool-Aid just yet. I think they're still really programmed to catch. They can only catch what they're programmed.
What they understand.
Right? Yeah. Right.
Well, and you're also asking users to never make a mistake, which, let's be honest, who on this call can say I've never made a mistake, right? And much less an end user.
And that is by no means to point fingers or throw shade at any of those.
Just human.
You absolutely still need those products. You certainly still need some form of preventive and automated security solution. But it can't be the end all be all. It is absolutely not. When Kyle has that point and this vantage that, maybe we should use some of that budget for other things, or really make use of what we can. Our thought with Windows Defender and managed antivirus, as we're coming into that solution right now, it's in beta, so folks can tune in if they'd like to for managed antivirus. We're still tuning it up, but
it's a hell of a product today, right? That Windows antivirus is not the defender of your daddy's computer, right?
Absolutely. I think so. Me as a bad guy, right? Me acting as the adversary with some of the penetration testing and red team stuff that I like to do. Windows Defender is now a formidable foe. It's doing good stuff.
I'd like to hear that.
What we bring though with managed antivirus is knowing that sure, Windows Defender might run great on your computer. But what about all of these other computers that we have? What about across the entire enterprise? Because it's localized to that host and to that computer, it's really hard to manage Defender at scale. That's what we wanted to do with managed antivirus. That's how we wanted to set, okay, if you want to have everything run at a certain schedule, if you want to have everything match a certain policy, if you want to have everything, et cetera, you have multi-tenancy, you have everything else that Huntress brings to the table with that telemetry, with that visibility and coverage. But now we're super tuning Windows Defender and really making it the best that it can be across your entire organization.
And you mentioned, I don't mean to cut you off, you mentioned budget. Like everybody struggles with how do I get my customers to consume all this product? And I remember when I sold my MSP almost a year ago now. Our top end Sophos, EDR, MDR, all the DR things after the SKU was like an $8 or $10 subscription by the time you got managed incident response and all that kind of stuff. So, if you can scale that way back and add a layer that is, that adds a whole extra third party to look at things, there's not just money for a Huntress add-on or whoever. There's money for a lot of other things. And that's a big chunk of product to say we're going to spend all this money and assume it's getting beat anyway.
Yeah, you start calculating margin, you start calculating, cost, ROI, et cetera. I think, maybe obviously I'm biased, right? I don't mean to come here and cram product down your throat, but I think it's a great thing.
we wouldn't have you here if we don't believe in what you're doing. But so now we're going to talk about like assume breach. What are we going to do to make sure we're ready when that happens, right? Let's say we've got all of our fancy products out there and somebody still gets through, right? Whether it be end user, whether it be 0 day, whether it be whatever. What is the Huntress, and you guys built this tabletop experience, this tabletop pack that we're going to talk through today. But let's dive in and see how we can be more prepared when assume breach becomes actual breach.
Absolutely. Thanks. So yeah, what we wanted to talk about today, right? Coming off the tails of this Jurassic Stock, our event, our presentation, what we did just the other day. I don't know if any of you had been able to tune in. If you had, thank you. If you haven't, there was a link in the chat to showcase it. And we presented this fictitious, right? A little parody, a little satire thing for Jurassic Park. Taking that idea of the show, the movie Jurassic Park, but putting a little cybersecurity spin on it. What happens when Jurassic Park gets hit with ransomware? What happens when there's some incident, some horrible activity that, brings down all of their electronics and now real lives are at stake? You could, of course, parallel this to, again, whatever incident you want to in reality. What we come to when we were presenting that performance, and that's really all what it was. A few of us were acting for the first half of the presentation, and then for the second half, we try to take that presentation mode off and just banter and really talk about the real world value and takeaway here. We tried to slip in things during the performance in the show that would reflect legitimate, real things that happen in the real world. And I think, in my opinion, one of the most important things that happened during that show, and something that we certainly discussed yesterday, but we can go a lot more in depth in today, was that when the incident response guys, when the techs come in, the nerds are showing up to start to respond to this incident, they ask the owner of Jurassic Park, they ask the head honchos here, business owners and decision makers, what does your disaster recovery response plan look like? What is your business continuity response plan? What do you have? What policy, procedure, what have you already thought of, so we know what to do here? What systems are critical to come back online first, et cetera, et cetera. And then the owner of Jurassic Park comes up empty-handed, pulls out this binder.
Have crayon pictures of
right.
this thesaurus and this thesaurus.
It's got a binder with doodles and drawings on it of dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Obviously, we kind of poked light at the fact, but that's real. Like that's a legitimate thing where you just aren't prepared.
Well, I mean, let's ask that question here today. How many of you guys, if you went to your customer and said, God forbid something happened to me and you had a ransomware incident, are you prepared to deal with it? Is your customer going to go, yeah, I've got this thing that you helped me build for the last 3 years that is my binder? Or are they going to say, no, I just rely on you to know what to do? Right? Is that, if somebody's got a better answer than that, hell, you're better than I was at my MSP, right? I'll admit it. That's the answer that we get. And I think it's an answer we need to evolve beyond. So, that's why I think these tabletop exercises are so important, and why I think it's worth it to go through this exercise. And it's an eye opener for your customer, right? We're always looking for the ways to show our customer the value in everything that we do. This is an eye opener. It was an eye opener to me when we sat down and had the conversation, and me and Slagle are going back and forth trying to decide who we would phone call first.
Yeah.
Right. And Ray was in on that call too. 3 smart guys and me trying to go back and forth over who we're supposed to call first. And there wasn't solidarity in agreement. Like, we had to talk our way through it and get there. So that to me just explains how complicated this stuff is and why it's important to know when the stuff's already hit the fan, that you don't have to be making those decisions with emotion and, adrenaline and everything else in the mix.
Absolutely. One thing that we did with the Jurassic Sock presentation the other day is that we wanted to have everyone that had registered and signed up, they would get emailed and sent, which I believe has gone out now, a copy of a Tabletop in a Box, which is this free educational resource that Huntress had put out. And truthfully, I take a little bit of a heart to that one. I don't know if you end up prying the thing open, but that is my baby. I poured the content and the idea into that. So those storylines, those options, those conversations all come from me. So hopefully you're talking to the right guy. But I'd like to give you kind of the origin story and really the background, some behind the scenes look on how that came together, if that's totally cool.
Love
You guys mind if I screen share?
Have at it.
Sweet.
You should be able to. Let me know if you can.
Awesome. So again, I don't want to make this like Huntress centric. Obviously, a lot of the stuff that we're going to be discussing will just ride off of that as the vehicle and vessel that these conversations come from. Previously, back in 2020, you can see this is way back in October, we put on some virtual event called Hack It. And one of the sessions that we would do in there was bringing in MSP community members. We had got Kelvin over from Lime Networks, and real leaders in the community kind of walk through some technical stuff or conversational things, just generally talk shop about security. But this session in particular was all about doing a tabletop exercise. And if you aren't familiar with a tabletop exercise, for some reason, that's really just role play. It's really just play pretend. You can start to think about or formulate, hey, if something went horribly wrong, how would we respond? Who would respond? In what ways? At what point in time as this develops and unfolds? Who do we call if we need to reach out to, et cetera? What roles come from that? So we originally put together this session as like an interactive audience engagement thing, but it turned out to be a lot of fun and I think really, really valuable for a lot of folks. Some of these slides here, and I'm trying to give you the behind the scenes by not putting this in presentation mode. I want you to see the speaker notes. We're saying, hey, it's kind of like you're hanging out with all your friends, but you're literally just thinking about that worst case scenario and how you might respond from it. There's a link in here that actually
lighting everything on fire at once. I like it. That's a great speaker note.
Totally. If you're interested, I could totally share that link. There's a government, if you ever take some solace in that discussion on what this is and how and why it's a great thing to do. Realistically, it's just planning out and knowing how you could respond when the nightmare situation happens, when it unfolds. A lot of these are tabletop exercises, but it's really just you ironing out the process. I would argue, as you're going through this, like, this is kind of fun to role play and play this game, but you need to have legitimate value to come from this. So write down who does what and actually make into a document, build out that instant response plan, etc., as you're going through this. The joy of the tabletop exercise is that it's role play, right? It's play pretend. Once the real stuff hits the fan, well, obviously that's a bad, horrible thing, but now you're prepared for it because you've done this all ahead of time. Yesterday, I had used the word, you kind of have someone designated as the dungeon master, right? If for any of us nerds that play Dungeons and Dragons, right? You have someone that is the facilitator and others that might climb into the other roles as to, how would you respond from the engineer perspective? How would you respond from the marketing or the salesperson? Do we need to make phone calls, et cetera, et cetera? I don't mean to drag you through all of this, but I wanted to preface kind of more of our conversation with this, because this is where the idea for that tabletop in a box really came from. It was giving you, the community, giving any MSP folks, any organizations, any business, some sort of framework where you could start to think about these things. And with it being role play, like with it being all play pretend, that kind of means you can do whatever you want. The whole point is to have these discussions. The whole point is to think about these things and what would the legitimate implications be if someone shot the server with the shotgun, right? Any of these crazy ideas, that's still what we want to be thinking about. We would try to throw in injects or something that would, maybe throw things off the rails or bring new discussion points as we went through things. And we'd start to think about these questions and offer some answers as we move on and on and on. And there is no right answer. There is no wrong answer. Some might be more right than others. But as you can see,
Carl, the PR guy, that's not the first right answer. Not open the payment processor right away.
But, I think every one of those stems to a learning moment, right? If we give a bad answer and talk through it and we figure out why it wasn't the best answer, there's a learning moment there.
So that session, those slides that I was just showing you previously were the real product that we gave and showcased at Hackett during that virtual event. But that was Kyle and Kelvin putting that together. And they had to think about what sort of scenario would we offer for us all to think about in building this community tabletop exercise. It goes to show kind of some stuff we've discussed already. Hey, it doesn't matter what we read about. Literally, some of these security incidents could happen to everyone, every product, every software. We need to switch to that assume compromise, assume breach mentality. And then we started to carve out some potential options. And this is just an excerpt, right? This is just a small sample as to what you might do, how you might respond. The whole point is that this is completely open-ended. It's whatever someone might bring to the table, and you will explore that road, that avenue, etc. So some of the behind the scenes on that is what we wanted to showcase here. But again, it's all about learning. Then when we started to think about, hey, this was really successful, like this seemed to be a really kind of a cool thing, we started to think, let's build that into a tabletop in a box framework and structure where we would carve out those scenarios, and you might, again, figure out who is going to be the facilitator, who will be a player. Do you have a technical team designated versus an executive or business team, et cetera? And then we talk about these different ideas. What if your organization gets hit with ransomware? What if there is an insider threat? Or what if there was some accidental, all of our backups are deleted? And we try to carve out these ideas again. And we even have some of those injects or this discussion points. And truthfully, in a lot of these scenarios, if you were to run into a wall that would land in an inject, we didn't want to give you the solution or the answer because truthfully, we don't know. This is a little subjective, it totally depends on the scenario. And that is exactly why we're trying to carve out all of these different paths and avenues for how you might respond to what situation. And that's why we listed, ransomware could be one situation. Deleting your backups could be one situation. And we tried to think, and this is actually pretty funny, if you look back in our brainstorming documents, we say, hey, we still have some ideas in draft. And actually, when we rolled out this whole thing for a tabletop in a box, we still have some others that maybe we'd like to bring out in the future. Hey, someone gets phished. How does this unfold now? RDP, the remote desktop protocol, was left open. Oh, there were VPN credentials that weren't really, I don't know, maybe gone away after pandemic or however you want to formulate that backstory there. Or, there's an active hack going on right now. Or group policy was pushed the wrong way. We have that bad actor at the table. Maybe you could play a little bit of a game of Clue if you wanted to, or Who Done It, right? A little malware murder mystery.
I think you can check that one off the list. It's been done already.
It's like an expansion pack.
Yeah.
Of a tabletop in a box. I like it.
So while a lot of these ideas were sort of in beta, what I wanted to get across to you as I show you some of these, even as they aren't fully formulated, I would venture that one of the real value that comes from doing tabletop exercises like this is that you could build out the response for just about every scenario and situation that comes your way. And I know that's a lot. Again, practically asking you to see the future. But when we were having conversations in the Jurassic Sock presentation the other day, Ray had brought up this idea, like, I've worked with organizations that would have not one incident response playbook, but they'd have 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 or 15 because they have so thoroughly planned out everything that could go wrong and how one might respond in whatever scenario. And if you really want to have fun with this, you could kind of turn the tables. Again, this is just an echo to Hack It, but we've done the previous one where we were trying to act as the bad guy. Let's say the threat actors, if you were the hacker, what would you do in an environment? Would you start to exfiltrate data? Would you drop ransomware right away? Would you install a crypto coin miner? Would you vandalize the website? How could you track that down if, again, now back to reality, you're the defender, you're the good guys. But that was some sort of fun that we could have while we were all thinking about this in advance. And that's the gist here.
So it reminds me of sort of your best offense is a good defense, right?
Yes.
Like, so sometimes to think about how you would go about it lets you back map from, instead of when you're marching down the happy path, it's sometimes harder to come up with what's going to interrupt you. So you have to start with like, okay, there is no happy path. We're going to destroy it all. And how do you get back from it?
Totally. We talk about, what sort of phishing would happen? What are we looking at here? Are we going to end up maybe sending out those malicious updates? Do some supply chain stuff? Should we get some credential harvesters off of the dark web? What do we need to do if we're going to drop ransomware? What's the business model if we're the bad guys? Are we going to give them any decryptor, et cetera? How do we exfiltrate data? Blah, blah, blah. That's another avenue. If maybe you want to turn that idea of a tabletop on its head, maybe be a little offensive and not just defensive. How are we doing on time? Am I blabbing on or yakking too much?
Oh,
We're good.
Not at all. You're good. We're at 3:30.
So with all that said, I know I've had a lot of build up to what we wanted to present for the tabletop in a box sort of resource. I can't say product because it's totally free. If you were to download the zip file that would give you this tabletop in a box kind of resource here, we include a pre-incident checklist an incident response checklist, some instructions for how to run this tabletop in a box. We'll offer a video of us going through that Hackett situation, those slides you just saw, playing the game with real people in that live audience, and then kind of what this is, the goals that you want to do, et cetera, and how to conduct this with, again, a facilitator, that dungeon master, and then the players, the people on your team. You could literally assign your tech to act as the tech, or maybe they might even switch roles so they could have the idea of what would sales or marketing really do in the situation. Would we send an apology email to all of the customers and clients? I don't know. Sometimes it's human nature to do that, but might not be really all that appropriate in some cases.
Well, one of the interesting things I saw in a breach recently was that the company that was breached took all their salespeople and flipped them over from outbound sales to customer contact, and basically gave them a script and said, look, you ain't calling nobody and selling nothing in the middle of this. So let's get you on the phone and getting warnings out, getting alerts out, communicating the message, et cetera. So just retasking of resources like that is interesting, right? To let people see how the other side's going to work and how that actually impacts them.
As a customer success human, I've absolutely been put in charge of writing templates for sales and customer success on who's going to get a call, who's going to respond to incoming emails, what their appropriate response is, right? What everybody gets to say. Absolutely part of the game. That wasn't a game.
Right.
Again, that value for the tabletop exercise is that it can be a game until you prepare yourself for the real thing. I'll just kind of scroll through a couple of these again. I don't mean to just make your eyes glaze over with some of this stuff, but I hope some of it could be worthwhile. We had a pre-incident checklist, some ideas, and again, not all inclusive, not the one size fits all guaranteed solution. As with everything, your mileage may vary on this sort of thing. We have a cheeky disclaimer, right? Hey. But with that said, these are the things that we want everyone to think about beforehand, prior to this stuff going wrong.
I'm going to interrupt for just a second to say, last weekend I read the Checklist Manifesto, which is all about having a checklist that has just enough stuff to make sure that you don't miss the important parts. And I think and it says like about this size, right? Any more than this, everyone's going to think it is all the things, and they're not going to do thinking for themselves. If you had less than this, it wouldn't be enough to get those people to think beyond like big ideas instead of tactical pieces. So this is really a solid looking size checklist of like, it lets you still do some thinking and not miss the biggies. And so I'm loving that.
Cool.
So I want to talk about one of the comments, because Howard said, I love this idea. It's a great way to bring it up with customers who have been hesitant to participate in planning and in the planning process for incidents. So take a minute and talk through how you see MSPs doing this. Is this something they should do alone first, with their internal team, and then expand and bring customers to the table for? Is it something that should be done with customers at all? How do you see this being utilized?
Excellent segue.
An audience plan.
I knew this was coming.
Inject Alex.
It was Howard's fault. Howard made me look smart. I just stand next to smart people. Good stuff happens. I tell you guys this all the time.
Maybe I'm not going to end up hitting the answer to that question exactly with the nail on the head, but I hope this is somewhat worthwhile. I don't know why my roommate decided to vacuum. I don't know if you can hear that off on the side. Sorry.
We can't. You're good.
Okay, perfect. It's just me going to listen to the vacuum going.
That's not distracting. Inject, vacuum.
Right. So here is really the meat and potatoes of the tabletop exercise, and for the tabletop in a box that we wanted to offer. It is practically the same as what you would just seen for those Hackett things. But we'll have that scenario given, and this is absolutely totally customizable. So if you wanted to do this with your clients and your customers and partners, you could just slap in their logo, their branding, your logo. Again, do what you'd like. We just wanted to give you the drawing board and the crayons to kind of play here.
I'll inject one of my common statements, which is customers love to see their logo on things. So as much as you like your logo, know your customers like theirs better. And so when you put your logo, even if you're going to put yours, put theirs too, and maybe make theirs a tiny bit larger than yours.
So if I were to kind of get this thing started, I'll try and hit actually present on this thing if it will let me. And it might, can you switch? Yeah. As you know, as we've kind of been saying over and over again, you can divide this up into folks that might be responsible for what thing. The leaders in the organization that might delegate tasking, the worker bees, etc. And you have the room to play and make those decisions as you'd like. We'll offer that scenario overview. And this is, again, just one idea, one potential story to walk through. But you could switch it up. You could have it anything that you'd like. And those are all these ideas between phishing or RDP, stuff that we've already kind of brainstormed. What we wanted to offer with this slide deck is that you could literally have these options listed and then just click choose on which thing you'd like to do. I guess I could attempt to make this interactive. Anyone have a thought they'd like for A, B, C, or D?
Oh, I suspect someone will have a thought on that one.
No
Drink
worries.
heavily. No surprises. That's Kirk's response.
Yeah, pack it up and go to Costa Rica.
Right. In which case, we know calling insurance and legal counsel will get some people eaten by dinosaurs quickly. Okay, C was the first response we got.
C,
Call
I
insurance
see
and
A.
legal counsel.
This totally, we don't need to play this game. I wanted to showcase this idea for you. If we were to choose that option, you could say, hey, that's the option that you chose. And if there were an inject or not, it would kind of display off to the side here. Then you could click on that next question and move along. How do you handle something? Of course, you could add in more questions. You could spur more conversation. Hey, group. Hey, everyone surrounding me. Why did you choose that option? Out of those there, what makes that the best choice or the most right? If we're saying there aren't any real right answers or any wrong answers, what of those would be absolutely the wrong answer?
I was
Maybe
going to say,
that's
does HR sit in on this and take all the people that take some vacation time and say, we're going to have a chat on Monday at 4 p.m.
and that's totally anything that you could decide.
Yeah.
One of these, I think, is a fine example here. Hey, how do you handle client communication? Don't tell anyone anything. If you were to choose that, well, hopefully you'll see an inject come in, maybe some discussion point or any other thing that could branch off of that. Look, people are calling. They see the ransomware pushed out to their own devices. They want to know what's going on. How do you respond, etc. And maybe this might not happen in the real situation that goes down. Maybe it does. But you can, again, have the foresight and start to think about how you would respond, et cetera, et cetera. Click on next question, tinker through these, and it will literally offer new things, injects discussion points kind of as you move along. Again, we might not tell you the answer. We might not tell you a solution because we want you to think, et cetera. Put out the fire, sure thing. Go back to business as usual, etc. Discussion point or inject might come in. Oh, we got to disclose this incident. How are you going to keep this going if you need to? We could kind of keep cruising through this, but again, I don't mean to drag you through it. I hope that this sample set gets the idea across. If we had injects and we had more, at the end, it's all about the conversation. It's all about the roads you went down, the ideas you had, what you took from the value in this to build out that incident response plan, to create your disaster recovery, your business continuity plan, to know the critical assets and necessary systems to bring back up online, what to recover first, et cetera. And I hope that that's something worthwhile. But these are the things that you could help start the conversation.
So I think
that's what
it's
it's all about.
brilliant. Love it. people in the chat are already asking about it. So yes, for sure. It reminds me very much when the kids were little and we, you have to have the first time they go to elementary school, the teacher asks what your fire plan is, in case of danger at your house. And so we had to have a chat with the kids like, all right, dad's going to get Josie, mom's going to get David. If that doesn't happen, right, we're going to meet at the volleyball court. Like you have to, we had all of these little sub scenarios and kept it simple for the kids. But it's very much at a larger scale of the plan. I see in the chat, William's already writing his communication emails, because let me tell you, in a stressful situation, that's not the time to figure out a politically correct way to explain, a potentially business catastrophe, for sure.
It's always easier to think through all the potential impacts and things. Yeah, as William says, when your shit's not on fire.
I will maybe touch on one last thought for my formal song and dance for you. I think it is one thing to do the tabletop exercise, to walk through all of these options, but it's another thing to literally validate that. Like, sure, you have backups. You can say you have backups, but have you literally rolled everything back with those backups? Have you literally tested those? Have those been implemented and you started from ground zero with these preparations? Have you done everything that you can tangibly try and recreate as you're doing all this planning? That is something that you really need to do, because if you get to crunch time, if the real stuff's on fire, you don't want to have any unanswered questions. There should be absolutely zero open questions and things that make you stop and go, I don't know. Do those things work? Do we know how to contact that breach coach, that lawyer, etc.?
Yeah.
Those are things you all need to have done.
It's always fun in the heat of things to figure out that domain controller that you really need for DHCP and DNS is going to blue screen on a restore, right? That's the worst time to figure that out, and guaranteed something like that will happen.
I don't happen to have Costa Rica's FBI phone number, right? So, or whoever you're going to call at the Federal Dinosaur Administration,
right.
etc. William said he's doing this on Wednesday during their staff meetings. So John, are there sort of recommended starter steps, work your way through and take different scenarios and work your way up to complex? Do you start with the scariest one and work your way back?
Yeah, I mean, as an MSP who hasn't done this, what's the best place for people
what's
to start?
the first one that you would maybe the happiest path with, like, if you don't start here, it's all going to go sideways? And you're welcome to say, like, Marnie, you clearly don't know what you're doing.
I mean, honestly, maybe this is just the devil on my shoulder, but I would try to recreate any of the recent widespread large-scale incidents that have gone on the past month.
Yeah.
And what else might come? Okay,
Right.
We talk about Exchange, we talk about SolarWinds, we could think about Colonial Pipeline. How would we respond if any of that crap happened to us? And if you start there, that might get you starting to think about other options, other scenarios, maybe taking and seeing the real damage in the real world could be a fine starting point. But
yeah. And there's a lot of little things to think about. You talk about recreating the things that have happened in the recent past. I was talking to the CEO of a backup provider that's a small niche backup provider. They don't work with a lot of MSPs, but they had one MSP who was not a Kaseya customer who was breached. They lost 200 customers to encryption, and they had a staff of 25.
Damn.
Like, how do you rebuild that? And so those are the things I think you guys should be thinking about. Do you have a couple of MSPs who you're friendly with, but are maybe an hour outside of your territory? They're not competing in your backyard with you. You can be friendly with them and say, hey, if shit goes really sideways, I'll drive to your place. You can drive to my place. We can help each other put our businesses back together, right? Get an NDA in place ahead of time. Get some kind of an agreement in place ahead of time. Think about these things that can be done. Talk to your customers about, God forbid you had a breach. We had a great conversation yesterday about what do you do once you've had this breach? If you need to keep the logs and the evidence in place. How do you reimage all your computers if all you can do is nuke and pave over the ones you already have? And can you reasonably keep enough spares around to deal with that incident? Or is it time to go talk to your customers and say, hey, for every computer, you probably should keep a spare hard drive? There's a lot that gets lost, and we kind of played through the scenario yesterday where the insurance company goes, well, if you nuke and pave over all that, we don't get any evidence and we can't see that it wasn't total negligence that got us in here. Why would we pay for the recovery? Those are really critical things in the moment, and they're things that honestly, until some of the more recent events, I hadn't thought about. You think about how to get one customer back up. Or at least that traditionally had been how my brain operated. Can I download this one customer's 4 terabytes of data? Not can I download a couple terabytes for every customer and get them back up and running? So
I remember you mentioned that point. It'd be like, okay, however many terabytes, 500, 1,000, etc. for everyone. And the conversations you have with insurance could very, very differ from one customer as opposed to 10 or 50. So.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also kind of brought, the conversation of like, do we use separate management tools on ourselves versus our customers? Do we what's like, how do you segregate things out? So if we get taken down, it doesn't take down. Yeah. I think I've had more sleepless nights in the last month than I've had probably the last year, just because it's a lot of what ifs,
Right.
Like if one customer goes down, well, that's a rough day, or a couple of days maybe, but it's not.
The statement that I got from the CEO was that there were several employees who had not slept in 48 hours, and I think Kyle has some things to say about that. I'm sure John does too, about self-care in the middle of these things. And I'll let John comment on that. But it's also something where you're going to make mistakes if you don't rest, if you don't sleep, if you don't let yourself recuperate in the middle of this, regardless of how bad it is for your customer.
Yeah, I often tend to, I don't know, I, for one thing, am human, right? And absolutely totally forget about, I should probably eat something during the day. I do that even if the sky isn't falling. But
come over here and work with us, John. Like I eat every 30 minutes, whether I'm supposed to or not.
That is another good use for your sales guy when things go sideways, right?
You go get coffee. That would be great.
Make sure everyone eats. Make sure everyone remembers to walk away from their computer.
But get a sleep schedule. Get a shower schedule. These are crazy stuff that it's so weird to think about, but it might really save the day at some point. Coordinate there. We've showcased a surviving a mass ransomware attack webinar with Jonathan Crow and Ninja RMM. Kyle's the star of the show for that thing, and I've also tried to include that in a Reddit post that we shared, and we've done that on recent webinars, Tradecraft Tuesday, etc. So I think we have articulated that already, but it does get to the legitimate raw human, like get food catered to the office, tell the spouse, hey, work's going to be really crazy for the next weekend, next week, next month. You just have to keep in mind the legitimate human person to person toll that it takes. So that's another element.
And if you haven't had that conversation with your spouse at this point, it's probably time that you have one, that this is the realistic world we live in. And
especially over the holiday weekend, that sucked.
but that's when they're going to happen, right? I mean, that was not an accident. They're looking for the guy that went out early on vacation Friday afternoon and left him more time to work.
So we actually just signed up with a company called Beasley Breach Response Services. I don't know. I mean, you guys are probably, but they seem to have like a ton of pre-built content, and it's the entire point of it is as an insurance company to help us pre-plan what happens if we get taken down or us and our clients get taken down.
I'm trying to decide who's a faster Googler, John or Alex, and I think John hit the keyboard first. So I think is this.
I hadn't even finished saying Beasley Breach Response.
I know that's exactly right. You watch John go.
It may. I'm sure it's not perfect, but like it's something that we got I think added on or included into our cyber policy, and so I mean, it basically talks about like what's new, IOCs, like what to prepare, investigate, and respond. Like that's literally what their website looks like. I don't know. Like again, they have. I mean, they actually have tabletop exercises built out in it, IR plans built out in it. Like ask the experts. I mean, is it perfect? No, probably not. But like again, it goes. I mean, it allows us to show that we're at least working towards better.
Well, I have a very strong opinion about where perfect and appropriate vary. You know, you can let perfect be the enemy of good until you don't get anything done. But to a very, very, very large extent, when your insurance company says, this is our policy, perfect or not, you damn well better be doing it. Because at the end of the day, when the shit hits the fan, their job is to be in your corner. They will protect you if you do what they tell you. And if you don't, you limit their ability to protect you. So, you know, I think these things are super important, and knowing them ahead of time absolutely matters. I hadn't seen this thing at all. So that's a cool resource.
Well, and I guess, I mean, not to be completely mercenary about it, but I feel like if I'm like, if I know that like I'm doing everything that a insurance company and or like what the responding body's going to say we did it as right as possible, like it means we're gonna have a way better outcome like in 6 months, 3 months from now, at least in my head.
That's not, I don't think that's mercenary. I think that's just realism. That's understanding where we live today.
Howard, I honestly don't know. We've been really pushing hard. We've been pushing our insurance broker really hard to make sure that we got as good a coverage as possible. Like we've been upping it a lot. And so we were like, basically July 4th happened or that weekend. And I was like, okay, like we've got to go to them and find out like, who do we call if something happens? Like we need to know this stuff. And so my partner's been like deep diving with our broker, and then they found this and she got us all registered for it. And so it's like, I honestly don't know, but I think we may be tied into Beasley on it. And then our coach said it was the best one that he'd heard of. So I was like, well, that's a good.
I mean, it's an interesting resource. I'm just scanning through their site now. I saw that they offer insurance, which is why I was asking. I see that they underwrite for Lloyd's, or they use Lloyd's as an underwriter. So just trying to see where it fits in versus Chubb or Travelers or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, Beasley is one of the larger insurance providers out there. So
exactly.
I think we may have that portion of our coverage with them, and that's why we got access to it. But like I said, I'm not the one developing that portion of the response plan.
Just to be clear, I'm not asking you as though you were selling it. I was just wondering if you happen to know. I already filled out their form to get some information on it just to see. I mean, because I know a lot of guys, a lot of people in the MSP community use TechRug, and you know, a couple of other vendors like that. And you know, I happen to use my insurance. The person I use is for cyber insurance tends to be somebody that we've actually done you know, several cyber insurance webinars, and he's referred customers to me. So it kind of feels like it might be a problem if I don't use his insurance. But by the same token, if I can bolt something else on, I'm not going to be you know, knifing him in the back. So that's the only reason why I was asking. But I'll take this offline because I don't know if it's valuable past that.
Totally.
no, that's a cool resource.
Yeah, but thanks for the resource. It looks really cool.
In the land of cool resources, I would like to say that, John, I've never seen your tabletop piece before. First, I think it was a brilliant idea, and to gamify anything, especially when it's a serious piece, but to make it palatable and consumable with, again, exactly the kind of need to know priorities. I love that brainchild. I think it's a great one. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot.
So we've had some interest in that tool. I'm assuming that everyone here obviously signed up for yesterday's webinar, but God forbid somebody was unavailable for that and doesn't have that email coming to them with that resource in it. How can they get this?
Yeah. So here, let me drop the link just here for you in a moment. Totally sorry. Okay, so I have just shared in the chat the huntress.com resource link to be able to download that. Just gives you a zip file. Forgive me. I am, again, just a poor nerd, not not a sales or marketing guy. It does ask you to fill out a form. Marketing makes the world go round. If you don't mind, we're happy to offer you the resource.
I feel like for all that work, you deserve their emails.
I feel like I will be getting the emails that I'm already getting since I already use Huntress. So life is
better.
There you go.
Well, hey, thanks so much, guys. I know it's a Friday. I know it's a bit in the afternoon, at least for me. I don't know where y'all are at, but thanks for letting me hang out and crash the party for a bit. I hope I didn't yak and blab on for too long. I hope there was still some value and some good content, some gold nuggets in there. But please don't hesitate to reach out. If you have any questions for me, if you just want to chit chat, you can cyber stalk me probably pretty easily.
John H. on LinkedIn.
John, I just want to say thank you for coming out and hanging out with us today, and for everything you guys do at Huntress. I mean, you guys are leading the pack between, even just the when the incidents happen, go out and playing matchmaker and getting people together to help each other. You guys are out in front of it all and doing the good work, fighting the good fight. So we greatly appreciate you, and appreciate you coming here, sharing your resources, because I know those I know how much work goes into those. So very much appreciated. If everybody's good with where we've left things, we'll give you back 5 minutes of your Friday. If you want to hang out and ask a couple more questions, we'll hang out till everybody drops off. And there they go.
Are you good if I steal that link and put it in the email that I send out weekly to the folks that couldn't join this call, knowing that they'll have to put their email to get it to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you for spreading that around. I'm grateful, but I'm happy to share whatever I can.
No, we love it, sir. I appreciate it. I appreciate all your time. Anybody got more questions while we're hanging out for a couple minutes? Or
hey, John, I have one question with the kind of like the zero trust stuff. What has Huntress done in some of those areas and stuff? Are you doing anything or planning on anything with zero trust applications?
Would you be able to kind of color that in a little bit?
Just application launching and stuff like that. Is Huntress going to ever look at, getting to a point where one of the products I just taking a look at is going blank on the name. Trust Locker.
Oh, yeah. I can tell you what is currently on the roadmap, and then maybe there might be some that would hit close to kind of what you're looking for. So we're fine-tuning managed antivirus, obviously. Next on the outlook is host isolation. So look, we see ransomware currently taking effect, or we see some incident, we see some bad activity in malware. We'll lock down that host, we'll quarantine it, we'll get out of the network. We're trying to think of the best way to do that, because obviously we don't want to. Sometimes it's necessary to roll a truck, right, or send someone out to be able to respond and work with it manually. So we're looking, do we drop the network card? Do we disable admin shares? Do we just set the firewall so that only Huntress or your RMM, or maybe even not your RMM, if that's what's compromised, can communicate it, et cetera. We're paving the way for host isolation, getting support for Apple or Mac agents. I know we have application auditing and a lot more of like 365 kind of in the maybe 2022 roadmap. But I don't know if exactly what Threat Locker kind of specifically, as you mentioned, that they do at the moment that we would do as much in the Huntress
They're basically application whitelisting everything. So they do basically figure out your baseline and then over and above that, then once you turn it on, then you have to get authorization to even launch anything new and stuff. So didn't know if you guys were going to that extent or not.
I think we will touch on that when we reach application auditing and some of that fragment pretty soon. I hate to say, it's in the works,
sure,
but that's the answer at the moment. So.
Well, and you guys kind of overlap on some of the SOC stuff too. But with what some SOC providers are doing, but I didn't know what direction, because you don't really have analysts sitting there looking at any of the logs because you're not ingesting logs or anything like that. But you guys see yourselves going into that direction, or you're going to just pretty much stay in your world.
You guys are doing log monitoring and analytics at this point, correct, John?
Yeah. So the Huntress agent looks very specifically for persistence, which means auto runs, scheduled tasks, services, WMI event consumers, IAFO debuggers, et cetera, nerd things. And we'll strictly look at that. Managed antivirus gives us much more visibility and an arm of prevention, while we were strictly just detection. Ransomware canaries, external reconnaissance obviously have their own place. But things like the event log or Sysmon or PowerShell transcription, stuff like that, we aren't reaching into just yet. Some may know that we recently acquired Level Effect, technology that had recon, which gave super cool, and me speaking as a nerd, incredibly cool, like process monitoring as for what processes are calling out to what across the network. And I'm very, very excited for that to roll into the product, because right now it's an alpha. It's going to rebranded Rio as the name. Recon will become Rio for what we'll call it. But that gives much more of an XDR approach, where we aren't strictly looking at the endpoint anymore, but now we even have that network visibility with Rio. It's currently in alpha, but again, super duper coming soon. So
with third wall, we can do that isolation and stuff like that.
Nice.
I don't know if you've ever taken a look at third wall, but for an inexpensive product, they're probably one. But the only thing is, it only works with Automate. So
yeah, and God forbid you lose command and control, you're not going to be able to use third wall to lock something down.
Yeah, well, and if you lose, your console, it does check back in the console, but it does isolate things, and you can take it. It basically uses the Windows firewall to isolate the machine, so you can unisolate it manually, but you have to know the commands and stuff. So,
Well, John, I want to say thank you again. We've
John.
extended our time.
no worries at all. I'm here for you.
It's 4:00 on a Friday. John's headed for a beer, right?
Yeah.
So we do pizza Fridays. We get all the friends to come over safely, of course.
And then the beer comes to the house. So
Yeah.
that's even better. Okay.
Sounds like a plan.
Good deal. Well, we should let you go get pizza, but thank you so much for letting us consume your time, John.
Thank you.
We look forward to everything that Huntress has in the pipeline, and we'll be keeping an eye on you.
Alrighty. Well, have a great weekend, everyone. Thanks again for letting me be here with you. Take care.
Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.